If you're trying to fit bigger tires underneath your fenders, and if you're looking for an aggressive look and better performance off-road than your stock suspension is giving you, you're probably in the market for a lift kit. This Super Lift 4-inch kit will be the most affordable option in the 4-inch to 4 3/4-inch category, and it'll achieve all of those qualities while also keeping a very comfortable ride for your 07 to 18 JK Unlimited. As for tires, guys, you can assume that the stock tires and even the 33s will look a bit small on any 4-inch lift. This lift kit says it's rated for up to 35-inch tires, which will most likely be the most appropriate out of all of the tire sizes for this kit. However, with 4 inches of lift, you will be able to squeeze a 37 underneath your fender. You may not have a lot of room to work with off-road as far as up travel goes, but if you switch out to some flat fenders and grab a pair of bump stops, you'll be just fine. As far as the install goes, this one gets a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, as most lifts do, and you will need an exhaust spacer if you have a 2012 and up JK, but I'll get into more details on the install in just a moment. For a 4-inch lift kit at this price, this is a pretty complete kit. However, with 4 inches of lift, I would recommend some extended front sway bars since this only comes with the rears, and if you have a Rubicon, those will actually be required. Although not required, I would also take a look at some control arm drop brackets, or even a set of new control arms to correct your pinion and caster angles for better road manners and comfortability, as well as to prevent any excess wear on your driveline. To break down the components, these coils will provide that 4 inches of lift, and Super Lift has them preset, which is going to eliminate any settling that might take away from that lift height that you're getting initially. The shocks will be longer as well, and it's really going to give you the ride comfort that you want out of this kit. There are 2 kinds of shocks, including a hydraulic shock and a nitrogen charged shock. A hydraulic shock will feel more fluid-like and cushiony, and it will provide the most comfort on the road. But it's more susceptible to shock fade over time from cavitation or foaming forming inside the shock when it's excessively worked. A nitrogen shock is gas charged, and it will ultimately be better at resisting shock fade from cavitation when being worked really hard, like excessive washboards and bumps at fast speeds, but it will feel a bit more rigid and stiffer compared to a hydraulic shock. This kit includes twin tube hydraulic Super Ride shocks. The shocks will be great on the road, and it's designed to resist any fading when switching terrains, but still gives you a really comfortable ride. Since this is quite a simple lift, this shock will fit perfectly into what this lift entails, while being mainly street driven, but being able to perform. What I also like about this kit is that it comes with a new front track bar that has forged ends to take more stress with larger wheels and tires off-road. The track bar even has Super Lift's reflex bushings, which will be heavy duty to dampen and keep your ride comfortable, as well as allow more movement than the stock bushings provide. This will also come with the rest of the hardware needed for a 4-inch lift, like brake line relocation brackets, as well as the rear track bar relocation bracket. If you're looking to do some major flex, I would, however, recommend some extended brake line hoses to stay on the safe side. For 4-inch lifts, you're usually looking at right around the $500 for less complete standard lifts to the $4,000 price range for the very complete kits ranging from short arms to long arms. This lift kit will be the most affordable option on the page at right around $500. Now, like I mentioned, this will be a pretty complete kit for what it is, but this will not be the most complete kit that we offer. Other 4-inch lifts that jump in price to well over $1,000 will include components like control arms, both track bars, and the front and rear sway bar links. Once you do get into the 4-inch range on a JK, you will need extra components to correct all of your angles to keep a very comfortable ride. You don't necessarily need all of the components at once, and you can add them on down the line, saving some extra cash at the moment, and that's where this kit comes in handy. However, we do offer a very complete version of this kit that comes with all of those options for right around $1,500, and it's still significantly lower than some of the other kits with similar components. Overall, if you're shopping for a 4-inch lift and you are on a budget but didn't need all the bells and whistles immediately, this kit will be just for you. As you can probably guess, this is going to be a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the install, guys, and it's going to take you about half of your day with some hand tools, like an assortment of sockets and wrenches, and a lift or a jack and some jack stands.
First, you're going to be raising up the vehicle. The first step is to remove all of the wheels from the vehicle. Next, support your axle with jack stands. Disconnect both of your front sway bar end links. We are completely removing the sway bar end links. Remove both of the lower shock bolts. Next, we're going to fully unbolt the track bar and completely remove it. Now completely remove the track bar. Now it's time to remove the brake line brackets. Remove this bracket. Next, we're going to disconnect this vent tube in order to compensate for the height of the lift. First, remove this plastic clip. Pull this down until you see the clip. Next, we're going to unbolt the drive shaft. Next, we'll be removing the coil springs. Next, we're going to unmount the top portion of the shocks. Be sure to also do the same on the opposite side. Next, we're going to be removing the lower control arm to axle bolts. Next, insert the front coil springs. Next, we're going to be inserting the rubber bushing in the metal sleeve into the shock. Next, we are going to be installing the shock into the upper portion of the shock mount. Next, we will be installing the bolts into the lower control arms. Next, we're going to be installing the brake line drop brackets. The brake line will need to be bent and adjusted slightly in order for the screws to line up. Insert the supplied bolt, nut, and flat washers to secure. Next, we will be reinstalling the lower shock bolts. You'll need to kind of pull down on it to extend it far enough. Adjust your pull jacks accordingly to get the bolt holes to line up. A little bit more. Right about there. Next, we're going to be taking the rear sway bar links and we're going to transfer them to the front sway bar. It's ideal to remove the lower portions of these first. It makes it much easier for you to be able to swing down the rear sway bar so that you can access the top bolts on the sway bar end links. Now to remove the top portion of the rear sway bar links. It's sometimes helpful to use a 19mm wrench to hold the sway bar link in place so that it doesn't spin in the boot. And also repeat the same for the opposite side. Now we'll be taking the rear sway bar end links that we removed from the rear and we will put it on the front. Next, we're going to snug up all the bolts that hold the sway bar end links in place. Next, we will be installing the adjustable track bar with the adjustable side towards the axle. Insert the nut and bolt on the frame side. We're not going to bolt up the axle side of the adjustable track bar just yet. Once we get the Jeep able to be onto the ground, we can straighten out the steering wheel and then we'll install that nut and bolt. It's now time to resecure the drive shaft. Start all of these bolts in by hand first. begin the rear, we're going to start by unmounting the lower shock bolts. Repeat the same for the opposite side. Adjusting your pole jacks helps to remove this bolt. Next, we're going to be removing the upper portion of the shocks. It's a 16mm bolt. We're going to repeat the same for the opposite side. Next, we're going to be removing the axle side portion of the track bar. You obviously don't have to remove your sway bar end links because we transferred those to the front of the vehicle. So now we're going to start with the ABS lines and the brake lines. We're going to use a clip tool and we're going to remove the ABS line where it's attached to the frame. Just let that hang free. And we're going to repeat the same for the opposite side. Next, we're going to be adjusting the brake lines and adding in the brake line drop brackets. All right, we're going to start by removing this line clip right here. Use a pry tool to pull that off, like so. Okay, now that that's removed, we have to remove this 10mm. Your brake line free. All right, next we're going to be installing the brake line drop bracket. We're going to be reusing the same 10mm bolt that we just previously removed. There. Snug that up. Now you're going to need to reform the brake lines in order to get it to line up with the brake line drop bracket properly. To come outwards a bit. This requires quite a bit of finagling. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just get it so that it's out of the way. Take a supplied 11mm nut and bolt, put it through the brake line drop bracket and secure it. There we go. You're going to repeat the same for the opposite side. secure your brake line to your brake line drop bracket. Next, we're going to be removing the parking brake cable bracket. Next, we'll be removing the springs. You're going to do this by adjusting your pole jacks and dropping down your axle until you have enough room to completely remove your springs. You have to drop this down a little bit more. There we go. A little more. And we're free. Next, we're going to be removing the top bolt from the track bar, and we're going to be installing the track bar drop bracket. Now we'll be installing our drop bracket. This requires a bit of tapping in to get it to line up. Okay, we're going to be installing the two smaller bolts on the upper portion of the drop bracket. Start those in. Now we'll be installing the Superlift springs. Make sure that your springs are properly in place and raise your axle to seat them. We're now going to be installing the Superlift shocks of the previously removed bolts. We're going to be doing the upper side first. Snug up these bolts using a 16mm socket. Next, we'll be installing the adjustable rear sway bar end links. Take the top portion and install a flat washer on each side of the sway bar. And the nut. Oops. Using the previously removed bolt, attach the bottom. Right now, I'm currently tightening the upper portion of the sway bar end link. I'm using a 16 and 19mm wrench. Using a ratcheting wrench is making my life much easier right now. All right, now we'll be tightening the bottom portion. We're going to be using two 18mm wrenches. We're now going to do the same thing for the other side. with a washer on each side of the sway bar. Install the sway bar end link and use the supplied nut. Now install the bottom portion of the sway bar end link, reusing the factory hardware that's previously removed. And tightening the lock nut that will hold the length of the sway bar end link in place. We're now going to be installing the rear track bar into the track bar bracket. We're going to start by installing the track bar bracket inside first. Reuse the previously removed nut and bolt to secure it. And using the previously removed bolt and flag nut, we're going to reinstall that. One sec, I'm just gonna need to pry this over a little bit. Yeah, it's like just about there. Sometimes using a pry bar is helpful with this to slide the axle over. There you go, it's okay.
Is that good?
Back a little bit. Right about there. All right, now that the hole is lined up, insert the bolt.
Good.
Yep. And the flag nut on the back side. All right, and we're going to tighten the axle side with a 21mm socket. Using a 21mm wrench and a 21mm socket with an extension, tighten the frame side of the track bar. Now install the bolts in the bottom portions of the shocks. The jack supporting your axle may need a bit of adjustment in order to line up these bolt holes. The bolt hole here needs to come up slightly, and now it's lined up. Now reuse the previously removed bolt and nut. We're going to tighten this using an 18mm wrench and an 18mm socket. All right, we're going to repeat the same for the other side. This side also needs to be adjusted. Right about there. Now that the rear portion of the lift kit is complete, we can now install the tires. Next, we're going to be installing the previously removed flag nut and bolt into the front track bar. It's usually helpful when trying to line up this pole to have someone sit in the car and adjust the steering wheel until it lines up properly. You have now completed the install of your SuperLift 4-inch valve suspension lift kit with Super Ride shocks.
So if you're looking for an affordable way to get 4 inches of lift, this kit by SuperLift will be just for you. This is Meredith with XT, and you can find this and everything else Wrangler right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.